Welcome to the channel. Thank you everybody for tuning in. Join me on today's video where I'll be reviewing the San Martin SN026. This is one of San Martin's brand new releases. Now let me take you across to the San Martin site, as I have struggled to keep up with the new models that they have been coming out with recently. If we go over to the website, you'll see a fair few models that have been rolling out, and it seems like every 2 weeks they are coming out with a new model. Looking at some of the models that we see here, we see some older ones that they have just upgraded with a nicer bracelet. We see some very classical homage watches as well. But the biggest thing that San Martin, I believe, are now pushing is this whole original design. I am still somewhat skeptical about the word original, and I still use it quite loosely, referring to San Martin designs, because as you can see on a lot of the newer watches or the so-called original designs, there still are some very recognizable features that give the watch away. You can see remnants of other well-known brands, so definitely would be careful not to stamp the word original when talking about some of these newer releases. Now let's come back to the watch in question. This is the SN026. Now, regarding my earlier statement of original designs, etc., while I do agree that the case bracelet can be referred to as an original design, for me the dial makeup is just as important. Now, I don't know if you can tell, but this to me clearly looks like a very similar dial to the 50 fathoms. There is still some similarities that you'll see on quite a lot of their models, which does make them slightly recognizable. But having said that, overall, I think I do appreciate that they are trying to go down the original route, because by now San Martin are probably the most well-known brand on AliExpress, and I think the majority of people agree, including myself, that they are probably one of the best watchmakers out of China that we see on AliExpress. Although they do have the shortcomings, and I for one definitely try to find out the shortcomings on San Martin watches. I don't like to give them an easy ride. I do find myself being a bit more critical, but I believe I should, because they have started to demand a much higher price. In fact, more than any other AliExpress watch or homage brand out there. But with that price increase, what we have seen from San Martin is that they do have impeccable finishing on the watches. The watches are really, really well made. Not all, there are some issues that you can pick up on some of the watches and some mistakes like every other watch out there, but yeah, they are definitely improving. And just having this watch in hand that we're going to look at today, just some of the finishing definitely does stand out. So let me give you some more information about this watch. This watch is actually limited to only 199 pieces, as stated on San Martin's website, because this was their, the new prototype model. They're looking at original designs, etc. This is probably one of the most complicated cases that they have made. Now, the price for this watch in hand is around £260 for the PT5000 movement. You also have the option of using the Sellita SW200 movement, which will set you back at around £350 or £360. So they do want a fair bit. Going back to the point, they want a lot more money now. And I think that price increase is enough for a lot of you guys to switch off and say, you know what, that is too much for a Chinese branded watch with no real brand recognition. Now let's give you some specifications on the SN026. Now this watch, as I mentioned, of course, features the PT5000 movement. It is a clone of the Swiss ETA. It has a high B rate of 28,800 vibrations per hour, giving you a smooth sweep of 8 ticks a second. Accuracy is plus or minus 12 seconds a day. And I don't know if San Martin regulate these, but usually they do perform well under 10 seconds a day straight out of the box. You do have 100 meters of water resistance with a screw down crown, and you've got a flat case back which is held in by screws. We'll have a look at that slightly later. And you do have, of course, a clear coated flat sapphire crystal. You've got a full 316L stainless steel case construction. The overall weight of the watch is around 180 grams, so quite a hefty watch. Moving over to the bracelet, you'll see solid end links, tapered links, all solid links as well. A milled clasp, a somewhat shorter milled clasp, so a new clasp different to the ones that we saw, milled as well. And it does have 2 micro adjustments, which is probably a bit less. Let's discuss that after. You also got screw-in links, and I gotta say, the bracelet in hand just feels so good. In fact, I can compare it to my Seiko SCVS, the Spirit, which I have on wrist today. Let's have a look at that finishing on that bracelet. Probably one of the nicest bracelets I've felt on a Seiko in my collection anyway. So yeah, this already has very similar finishing. So I am actually excited to review this watch. I can definitely tell it feels really good in hand. Let's, you know, check out the rest of it. In terms of color options, as you can see in front of you, I've got the blue sunburst dial option. They also do a silver sunburst dial, a sort of minty green, and a black. I think all look good. Possibly the blue and the black probably are the best of the bunch. But yeah, that's definitely super subjective, but totally up to you guys which one you prefer. If you do want to take a look at this watch and it does really interest you, check the link in the description that I'll put to the store, and it is always appreciated that you use those affiliate links. Let's see what the SN026 brings us in terms of dimensions. You've got a case diameter of around 39.5 millimeters, a case thickness of 12.5 millimeters or 12.4 on this, a lug to lug of 47 millimeters. At the top of the bezel does sort of taper inwards, but at the base you're looking at around 37 millimeters on the bezel. Crown size is 6.4 millimeters, lug width of 20 millimeters, and the bracelet does taper down from 20 to 18 millimeters. Now, I do find myself, as I said earlier, being somewhat a little bit more critical when it comes to San Martin watches, because they are asking for around £250, which is, I think, around maybe $350, close to $400, depending on, you know, the specs that you go for. And I always pick out the dial game on San Martin isn't that strong. One of the watches that I've extremely disappointed with, and, you know, they still want a fair bit of money, is the 37mm, you know, Explorer homage. I found the dial to be very dull, boring, and the lume just wasn't up to scratch to usual San Martin standards. I am pleased to see that this dial does have a lot more going on from San Martin, and as I mentioned already, it does bear a striking resemblance to the 50 fathoms, which you can clearly see with the construction of the dial, the mixture of numerals and the batons applied, those concentric circles, but you know, it is done really well. Looking at the center circle, you've got this blue sunray pattern. The outer circle with the smaller fine concentric lines, you've got the applied numerals and the batons. Now, per usual with San Martin, the frames are slightly chamfered and also polished, giving you gorgeous light reflections and light play. Now, and outside of that, you do have a minute track that is clearly printed on the dial in white. You've got San Martin's hex logo at the 12 o'clock, and above the 6 you've got automatic 100 meters, etc. in white. So it is a much better dial from San Martin. There's quite a lot going on, and like I said, the light interaction is absolutely gorgeous to look at. Added with that blue color, it looks fantastic. Now, the handset used is a pencil style handset or a candlestick handset, however you want to call it. You've got chamfered edges which are polished. You've got the lume applied through the center, and you've got a highly polished seconds hand which has a red tip which does highlight it and make it stand out. And I like San Martin's approach to the handsets used, because they use that finisher on the center of the seconds hand, which doesn't allow you to see that pinion and adds to the overall finish. And yeah, as a watch enthusiast, I definitely appreciate that attention to detail. So, you know, the dial is good, a lot better than what they've come out with. You know, not just a boring grey dial or a plain simple dial. There has been some work gone into it, and I hope that for the future models they do really focus on the dial game and bring it up another level. Now, I'm really hoping they've used great lume on this, so let's take a look. So I am pleased to report that the lume applied on this watch is great. It's not like the Explorer, which was quite disappointing. However, this has got full application on all the numerals and the batons, and as you can see on the handset, it is BGW9 applied very well, no patchiness, and there is a fairly decent glow on there. Even though the indices are kind of slim, but they filled it adequately in my opinion. And you know, the ice blue looks really good, so I'm glad to see lume representative of the cost. Now, San Martin state that this is the most complicated case ever made, so let's have a look and see why that could be. So let's start off at the A face, and you'll see that the top of the watch has been brushed in a linear fashion. Now, the brushing on purpose, I believe, has been done slightly coarser that we see on most of the models, just so it is visible, so you can see that brushing grain. Now, of course, it has been done to a really great degree. You also have got these 4 polished screws that go on the outer edges of the watch case. Now, the watch case is an interesting shape. I think it is somewhat vintage. You saw a lot of these case shapes come across in the 70s, 80s, and I describe it as a sort of square cushion style case, because there is quite a fair bit of curvature. You've got some tapering to the bezel as mentioned earlier. You've got a highly polished edge off that bezel, which San Martin, being San Martin, have polished this to perfection. Now, also along the flanks of the case, you also find some polishing present just between where the lugs start to taper downwards. Now, looking at the case, you can see there are a fair few facets present. You can see just on the lug tips, you've got some linear brushing in a similar grain to the one on the A face, so at least it looks uniform. Now, the tips of the lugs, at least on the top, are highly polished, just to give you some sort of definition. And then just as the tips finish off, you got some, again, linear brushing. Side of the case, you've got horizontal brushing, and that is done to a much finer degree. As you can see, there's a much finer grain present, so different to the grain on the A face, and similar across the side of the case. You've got an 8-sided crown from San Martin coming in at 6.5 millimeters approximately, and you do have the hex logo engraved on that sign. So let's check out the crown. It does screw down, but you still have only 100 meters of water resistance. The function on the crown, it's okay. The sides are brushed as well. It's not too small and it's not too large either. There's a hacking of the movement, but I can confirm I don't think there's a date wheel in here because you can't feel anything while you turn it. There is still a ghost position present though, so I think it's just a case of they've removed the date wheel. The screw down, it's okay, fairly smooth. Now moving across to the case back, a very plain case back. I've left the stick on there, the P signifying the PT 5000 movement, and you can see here you've got screws in the 4 corners that hold down the case, and I think that's why this resistance is only at 100 meters. Now I don't know why they went for that, maybe for a slimmer profile, but it still is around 12.5 mil thick. Could have done with a screw down, but maybe it's just a part of the design. So looking at the case overview, really nice. No sharp edges. The transition lines are extremely clean as well, and yeah, I can definitely feel that quality in hand from San Martin. Very smooth as well. So previous issues where the cases have been slightly edgy, they have seemed to smooth them out. And yeah, the polishing is great. I like the highlights that it gives. You know, it isn't a dive watch, of course, a bit more of a sportier watch, sort of blending into maybe a dressier option. And this is where you have to give San Martin props, because they have steadily increased the quality of finishing, and you know, with all the feedback they've gathered, you can see that come across in their watches. They only do certain things now. So for example, moving on to the bracelet, you can see they only go for female end links on most of their watches now, and you've got solid end links, as mentioned about the specs, polished sides with screws. But let's look at some of the finer details that are present on the bracelet, and I have to say this is such a nicely made bracelet. It does remind me of the GS homage, but they've gone actually further than that. So the center links that you can see, of course, fully articulate. You've got polished center links, and you've got this satinized brushing in between on either side. And just have a look at that light interaction. That is absolutely stunning. Now on the sides, they're also polished, but not only that, the edges have also been smoothed off and finished off in a very high polish. Now that gives just so much quality to the bracelet. As I mentioned about the SCVS on wrist, very similar style of finishing, and I like how San Martin now have stepped up the quality on the bracelets just a lot. Like I said, you're not getting this level of bracelet from AliExpress at all, but the price does kind of represent that as well. Good end link fit and finish. Screw-in links, of course, a premium addition to a bracelet. Of course, use Loctite when securing these back in. They also provide you with a screwdriver, which is a nice touch. But what they have changed here, you know, the middle clasp, they've gone for a much shorter clasp. And I think that's because they possibly received some feedback saying that the previous clasp was just a touch too long. I did feel that on the, you know, the dressier or sportier watches, it does stand out. So I'm interested to see how this fits on wrist, but it only has 2 micro adjustments. So I think the links, I believe, are short enough to actually accommodate most wrist sizes. The problem I have, again, on the Seiko, it does have 2 micro adjusts, but I find it's not achieving that perfect size for when I resize it on the wrist. because either just a touch too loose or a touch too tight. There is no sort of Goldilocks zone when it comes to that kind of bracelet. So I'm interested how this translates. The brushing on the clasp, amazing, really nice, satinized finishing. You've got that hex logo. I absolutely love how that plays with the light there. Polished outer frame, polished letters, and that brushing or sandblasting in between, which gives some really nice reflection, and it does give you a very premium finish. Let's have a look at that. And that is, I think, the secret to a lot of watches now. I think San Martin have captured all the small elements that I particularly like, brushing and those polished highlights on case profiles, etc. It definitely makes it stand out. And I gotta say, the more I look at this, the more it does grow on me. It's a case design which I don't actually have in my collection, so I'm finding it very interesting. Here we have the San Martin SN026 on my 6.5 inch wrist. Sizing was really good, really easy, right? Helping with the screw in links. Screws are really well made as well, really nice, cleanly cut threads. Sizing was good as well, so I didn't have the same problem as I had with the Seiko Spirit, because the links are somewhat smaller. So I did get a really good fit on this wrist size. Just to micro adjust, that is going to be a bit of a down point for some people, because you do need just maybe another 1 or 2 micro adjusts to kind of help you get just the perfect size. In terms of how it looks and fits, I think it fits really good. The weight is spread out across the wrist, really nice fit. And I am kind of warming up to this case shape. As I said, it's the first case shape of this nature that I've got in my collection. I really love the finishing. I think the brushing and the polish highlights just complement each other perfectly. The light play on this watch is exceptional. You get light reflecting from all the angles and facets, especially that bracelet. Now that bracelet is superb, feels gorgeous on the wrist, very smooth, a very premium feel. Now how does that tie into the price? So this is where, let's talk about the price. So the price is £260 for the PT5000, and if you want a genuine, let's say, Swiss base movement, which is the SW200 from Sellita, that is going to set you back another £100. Let's take this watch out of AliExpress. If you had a micro brand produce this watch, exactly the same, with some funky micro brand name and a bit of a story, maybe from Singapore, you'd definitely pay this without thinking. You'd say £260 for a PT5000 is awesome value for money. When can I get mine? Now, unfortunately, when it comes to China, AliExpress, something direct from there and branded from there, I think that's just too much for people. I've seen comments, and I know it's a popular opinion that anything from China shouldn't be that much, right? 260 straight away, no, it's not worth it. But I think we've got to really consider where the watches come from. I'd say 99% of microbrand watches are all made in China, right? Whether or not they're assembled anywhere else is a whole different story. There is also a lot of commercial brands that are produced in China. Seiko itself has a dial factory in China. They have a case factory in China, etc. So, I don't think we should associate a taboo with China. But yeah, I get it. The brand doesn't have the same value that the price demands. But what about micro brands? They're not nowhere near as well established as some of the brands. Some of them are quite new, yet we do find them floating around this £260 to £300 mark. And I gotta say, the ones I've seen, they're not always this great. This is built really well. Like I said, just the bracelet itself, the amount of detail and work that has gone into this, it's difficult to get this level of finishing at this price point, I have to say. The case as well, great attention to detail, great quality. Now, what about originality? I still am skeptical. I don't want to stamp it with a fully original watch because I don't think it is. I'm sure the case, somebody might recognize the case from an older watch. But for me, the case is different and unique. However, as I mentioned about the dial, it is a 50 fathoms dial for me. So, I'm not going to say 100% original. And you'll find that is the case with most of the new releases. There are similarities that you can see in a lot of the watches. I think the first attempt at original watch had a Seiko dial, Seiko hour marker, Seiko hands. So again, that did take away that total originality for me. And you've got some other similarities with very well-known brands on across a lot of the other watches. But definitely headed in the right direction. They are trying different things. Like I said, they are only improving the finishing, the quality, the functionality of the watches is 100% on the up. So overall, yeah, a very pleasing watch. Criticisms, any changes? You know what? They've done well to impress me with this watch. I can't think of many things I would change, if any actually. Only thing I would probably look at is the handset. Because it is a 50 fathom style dial, I can't help but imagine the handset used traditionally on them kind of watches, which are the slightly broader and sword style hands. And I would have liked to see that, give them a bit more presence on the dial. I feel they're slightly thinner, but legibility is there. But that is me kind of stretching to any type of criticism, because I'm trying to keep it objective, right? Design is down to your taste. I don't mind the design, and I think the dial and the lume is good. So I do find a lot of things have impressed me on this watch. But you know, that's what you've got to consider. But I think for the price point, really well made, and you could justify it. But you know, I think this is where, maybe due to the publicity they get, I think they have added another £60 maybe just for now a brand name, because I believe they do recognize themselves as being, if not the best, one of the best on AliExpress. So of course they can charge for that. Okay, and that's it for me today. Thank you everybody for watching. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. And as always, check out the links in the description. I do appreciate when you use them to make a purchase on AliExpress. And yeah, I will see you on the next video very soon. Thank you again for watching.